My name is Randy, 34 years old, and I went from being the family disappointment to owning Mountain Peak Resort, the same luxury destination my mother loved visiting without me. For years, she laughed at my freelance web development career, calling it a hobby, while excluding me from every family vacation. She never believed I could succeed without a real job. What she didn't realize was that her constant rejection only fueled my determination to prove her wrong in the most spectacular way possible. Before I tell you how I transformed from the family disappointment to the owner of Mountain Peak Resort, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had a family member who refused to believe in your dreams. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boulder, Colorado, with picturesque mountain views that most tourists would pay thousands to wake up to every morning. Our family consisted of 4 people. My father, Thomas, a dedicated accountant at a local firm. My mother, Margaret, a high school English teacher, obsessed with appearances and status. My younger sister, Allison, and myself. From the outside, we probably looked like the perfect American family, but appearances can be deceiving. My mother, Margaret, had very specific ideas about success. In her mind, respectable careers came with titles, offices, and steady paychecks. She valued stability and conventional paths above all else. Doctors, lawyers, professors, and executives earned her approval. Anything creative or non-traditional was dismissed as frivolous or temporary. "People need to see that you're successful," she would often say while straightening my father's tie before company gatherings. Perception becomes reality. My father, though more supportive of my interests, rarely contradicted my mother. He would offer encouragement in private but remained silent when Margaret dismissed my accomplishments. His conflict-avoidant nature meant he prioritized household peace over defending me. "Your mother wants what's best for you," he would say after particularly harsh criticism sessions. "She just expresses it poorly sometimes." My sister Allison, 2 years younger than me, quickly learned the formula for parental approval. She joined the right clubs, pursued the right hobbies, and eventually chose the right career path in hospital administration. She became the golden child, simply by following the blueprint my mother had designed. I discovered my passion for web design during my sophomore year of high school in the early 2000s. Our computer lab had just been updated, and I found myself spending lunch periods experimenting with basic HTML. What started as curiosity quickly evolved into obsession as I taught myself to code using library books and online tutorials. By junior year, I had created websites for my history teacher's classroom, the school chess club, and even a local coffee shop whose owner had been impressed by my initiative. I was proud of my work and excited to show my parents what I had accomplished. One evening at dinner, I nervously announced I had something to share. I connected my laptop to our living room television and pulled up the coffee shop website I had designed. I explained how I had incorporated their branding, created an online ordering system, and even helped increase their weekend traffic by 20%. My father nodded appreciatively. "That's impressive, son. You put a lot of work into this." My mother's reaction was less enthusiastic. She glanced at the screen, then returned to her meal. "That's nice that you've found a hobby, Randy, but computers are for playing games, not making a living. You should focus more on your real subjects." The dismissal stung, but I was fortunate to have Mr. Peterson, my computer science teacher, who saw potential in my work. He stayed after school to teach me advanced techniques and encouraged me to consider technology as a career. "The internet isn't going anywhere, Randy," he told me. "People who know how to build it will always have work." Our family had a tradition of annual vacations to Mountain Peak Resort, a beautiful property nestled in the Rocky Mountains about 2 hours from our home. These trips were sacred to my mother, who saved all year and planned every detail meticulously. For 1 week each summer, we would stay in a rustic, luxurious cabin, hike scenic trails, swim in the pristine lake, and pretend we belonged among the wealthy families who frequented the resort. These vacations represented some of my happier childhood memories, times when even my mother seemed to relax her rigid expectations. I remember fishing with my father, making s'mores with Allison, and even occasionally seeing my mother laugh genuinely as we played board games in the evening. The resort symbolized a version of our family that could have been one where acceptance wasn't conditional. Despite my mother's lack of support, My passion for web development continued to grow. I spent weekends building sites for imaginary businesses and summers learning new programming languages. While friends focused on sports or video games, I was teaching myself PHP and JavaScript, fascinated by the endless possibilities of the digital world. The contrasting treatment between my sister and me became increasingly apparent at family gatherings. During my junior year, a typical dinner scene played out that perfectly illustrated the dynamic. Allison got accepted to the state governor's leadership program my mother announced proudly to my grandparents who were visiting. Only 20 students in the state were selected. Everyone at the table offered congratulations while Allison beamed. I was genuinely happy for my sister who had worked hard for the opportunity. Randy made the honor roll too, my father added, trying to include me in the celebration. Yes, and he also designed a website for Mrs. Garcia's Spanish class, my grandfather said, having taken an interest in my digital projects. My mother's smile tightened. Well, everyone needs hobbies. Speaking of real achievements, did I mention Allison is considering pre-med programs? The conversation quickly returned to Allison's accomplishments, while my web design work was relegated to the status of an amusing pastime unworthy of serious discussion. This pattern would repeat itself countless times throughout my adolescence, shaping my understanding of my place within our family hierarchy. By the time I graduated high school, I had built a small portfolio of websites and a large reservoir of determination to prove my mother wrong. Little did I know how dramatically our relationship would deteriorate, or how sweetly satisfying my eventual revenge would be. When college acceptance letters arrived during my senior year of high school, I had several options to consider. My grades and test scores had opened doors to some respectable institutions, including a business program my mother heavily favored. But I had my sights set on the computer science department at Colorado State University, which had one of the better tech programs in the region. Business is versatile, my mother argued during what became a series of tense discussions. Computer science will limit your options. Technology changes so fast you could study for 4 years and graduate with obsolete skills. What she failed to understand was that adaptability was precisely what attracted me to the field. The constant evolution meant those who could learn quickly would always find opportunities. Despite her persistent pressure, I enrolled at CSU as a computer science major. My father, in a rare moment of parental backbone, supported my decision by pointing out that technology jobs were among the fastest-growing sectors. "The boy needs to follow his interests, Margaret," he said during our final family discussion on the matter. "He's the one who has to live with his choice." My mother responded by giving me the silent treatment for 2 weeks before my departure for college. University life offered a refreshing change from the constrained atmosphere of home. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who shared my interests and spoke my language. In study groups and computer labs, my skills were respected rather than dismissed. Professors encouraged innovation rather than conformity. Yet even in this supportive environment, my mother's voice remained in my head. During our weekly phone calls, she never failed to mention cousins or family friends who were pursuing serious degrees in medicine, law, or finance. "Your cousin Bradley just got an internship at Goldman Sachs," she mentioned casually during my sophomore year. "Starting salary for those positions is 6 figures after graduation. Something to think about." What she didn't know was that I had already begun finding my own path to success. During my second semester, I had stumbled upon the world of freelance web development through an online forum. A small business owner was seeking help building an e-commerce site, offering $500 for what seemed like a straightforward project. With nothing to lose but time, I submitted a proposal and was shocked when I was selected. I spent a week between classes building the site, delivered it on time, and received my first professional payment. The feeling was indescribable, a combination of pride, validation, and excitement. This wasn't just lunch money, this was real income, earned through skills I had taught myself. That first project led to a referral, which led to another. By junior year, I was earning enough through freelance work to cover my living expenses. I created a system where I could balance my coursework with client projects, often working late into the night, but thriving on the challenges each new website presented. My graduation day should have been purely celebratory, but my mother found ways to diminish the achievement. As relatives congratulated me on my computer science degree, she interjected with comments like, "Yes, he's good with computers. We're hoping he'll find something stable now that the college phase is over." The college phase. As if my 4 years of dedication to learning programming, database management system architecture, and user experience design were equivalent to an extended adolescent rebellion. The weeks following graduation became a battleground over my future. My mother had arranged an interview for an entry-level position at the insurance company where her friend's husband worked. When I explained that I planned to pursue freelance web development full-time, her reaction was immediate and harsh. "Freelance isn't a career, it's what people do between real jobs," she said, her voice rising. "No benefits, no security, no retirement plan. You might as well tell me you're going to play video games professionally." My father predictably expressed concern while attempting to remain supportive. "It's a big risk, son. Maybe consider a steady job while building your business on the side." Allison now, in her 3rd year of college, and firmly established as the family success story, offered her own brand of backhanded encouragement. "You've always been good with computer stuff. Maybe you could do this until something better comes along." Their collective lack of faith was disheartening, but not surprising. I had spent years in an environment where my passions and abilities were systematically undervalued. But something had changed during my time at university. I had found my confidence and built evidence that my skills had real market value. I rented a small 1-bedroom apartment in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood, an area popular with young professionals and close enough to downtown to meet clients easily. The space was modest, just 600 square feet, with outdated appliances and temperamental plumbing, but it represented freedom. For the first time, I could arrange my life around my work rather than conforming to others' expectations. Those early months of full-time freelancing were challenging. Without the structure of school, I had to create my own routines and deadlines. Some weeks brought multiple projects and comfortable income, while others left me anxiously checking my email for potential leads. I learned to manage feast or famine cycles, saving during prosperous periods to cover the inevitable slow times. Finding clients required persistence and creativity. I attended local business networking events, joined professional associations, and optimized my portfolio website to attract search traffic. Each project completed led to testimonials, which led to referrals, slowly building my reputation in the Denver tech community. Family gatherings during this period became increasingly uncomfortable. My mother's inquiries about my work always carried the same subtext. When would I give up this experiment and get a real job? Thanksgiving dinner, my first year post-graduation, featured a particularly pointed exchange. "So how's the computer thing going?" my aunt asked politely as we passed dishes around the table. Before I could answer, my mother interjected, "He's still doing that freelance thing. We're hoping it's just a phase while he figures out his career path." I maintained my composure, though my knuckles whitened around my fork. "Actually, I just completed a project for a restaurant chain that's expanding nationally. They've asked me to handle websites for all their new locations." "That's wonderful, dear," my grandmother said. My mother smiled tightly. "Yes, but nothing beats the security of a good company job with benefits. Randy's father has been with the same firm for 25 years. The conversation moved on, but the message remained clear. No matter what I achieved as a freelancer, it would never meet my mother's definition of success. Rather than discourage me, her dismissal strengthened my resolve to build something undeniably impressive. The next 3 years marked a period of steady growth for my business. What began as one-man operation gradually evolved into something more substantial. I developed systems to streamline my workflow, created proposal templates that improved my client conversion rate, and invested in professional development courses to expand my technical skills. My workdays fell into a productive rhythm. I would wake at 6, exercise at a nearby gym, and be at my computer by 8. Mornings were dedicated to client communication and administrative tasks, while afternoons and evenings were reserved for focused development work. As simple as it sounds, this consistency was crucial to my early success. I diversified my services beyond basic website creation to include e-commerce implementation, custom application development, and digital marketing integration. This expansion allowed me to increase my rates and take on more complex, lucrative projects. One pivotal moment came when a local outdoor equipment retailer hired me to rebuild their online store. The owner had been disappointed with an expensive agency that had delivered a beautiful but functionally flawed website. I spent 2 months restructuring their e-commerce platform, fixing payment processing issues, and optimizing the site for mobile users. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. Online sales increased by 70% within the first quarter after launch. The owner was so impressed that he referred me to several business associates, including the CEO of a regional sporting goods chain with 30 locations across 3 states. This referral became my first 5-figure project. The sporting goods company needed a comprehensive digital solution that included inventory management, customer accounts, and synchronized pricing across physical and online stores. The complexity challenged me to expand my capabilities and even bring in specialist contractors for certain elements. Successfully delivering this project marked a significant milestone. Not only did it substantially increase my income, but it also positioned me as a developer capable of handling enterprise-level work. I was no longer competing with hobbyists for small business websites. I had entered a new tier of the market. This professional momentum coincided with my first major financial achievement, paying off my student loans 3 years ahead of schedule. I remembered the day clearly, sitting at my desk and making the final payment online. A weight lifted from my shoulders as I realized I had accomplished something meaningful through my hobby job, as my mother called it. I wanted to share this milestone with my family, so I called home that evening. My father answered and offered genuine congratulations. "That's fantastic, son. Not many people your age can say they're debt-free." When my mother took the phone, her response was predictably underwhelming. "That's nice, dear. Did you hear that Allison got promoted to department coordinator? She'll have 3 people reporting to her now." I swallowed my disappointment and asked about their summer plans, which led to an unexpected revelation. "We're actually finalizing details for our Mountain Peak trip next month," my mother said. "The resort has been renovating some of their premium cabins, and we managed to book one with a lake view." I waited for an invitation that didn't come. "That sounds great. When exactly are you going? I might be able to join for part of the week if I arrange my project schedule." An awkward pause followed. "Oh, I thought your father mentioned it. We've already confirmed the reservation for just the 3 of us. The cabin only accommodates 3 people comfortably, and we assumed you'd be too busy with your website work." The exclusion stung more than I expected. Our family had been visiting Mountain Peak Resort every summer since I was 8 years old. It was tradition, a rare constant in our family dynamic. Being deliberately left out felt like the clearest indication yet that I was no longer considered an equal member of the family. Later that week, I called my father when I knew my mother would be at her book club. His discomfort was apparent as he attempted to explain the situation. "Your mother thought." He began, then paused. "The truth is, Randy, she specifically requested a smaller cabin this year. She said something about you probably not being able to afford your share with your unstable income situation." The truth hit harder than any dismissive comment she had made before. This wasn't just about my mother not respecting my career choice. She was actively excluding me based on assumptions about my financial situation, assumptions she had never bothered to verify. I could have corrected these misconceptions, shown her my banking statements or client contracts. I could have offered to pay for the entire family vacation to prove my point, but something inside me hardened that day. If my success wasn't visible enough to earn basic inclusion in family activities, perhaps it wasn't worth trying to prove anymore. Instead of confronting my mother, I channeled my hurt into my work. I extended my office hours, took on additional projects, and pushed myself to excel in every aspect of my business. My apartment became little more than a place to sleep as I poured my energy into building something undeniable. This dedication paid off in tangible ways. I upgraded to a better apartment in a trendy neighborhood, bought a new car to replace my college clunker, and started investing a portion of my income in retirement accounts and stocks. Externally, I was displaying all the markers of success that should have impressed my status-conscious mother. Yet none of it seemed to register. When I drove my new Audi to a family dinner, my mother merely commented that leasing luxury cars was a poor financial decision. When I mentioned I was considering buying a condo, she warned about the housing market being unstable and the dangers of mortgages for people with irregular income. The pattern of exclusion continued the following year. I discovered through social media that my parents and sister had taken a cruise to Alaska, another family trip planned and executed without my knowledge. When I called to ask about it, my mother offered a flimsy excuse about last-minute arrangements and assumed scheduling conflicts. "We figured you wouldn't be able to get away from your computer long enough," she said with a laugh that contained no actual humor. "You know how clients are with their urgent website emergencies." By the third year of this treatment, the annual Mountain Peak Resort vacation happened without even the pretense of considering my inclusion. I only learned about it when my sister posted photos online with the caption, "Annual family tradition continues." The images showed my parents and sister, smiling by the lake where I had learned to swim, eating in the restaurant where we had celebrated my 16th birthday, standing before the stone fireplace where we had taken family Christmas card. Photos for years. I felt like a ghost erased from my own family history. The resort that had once represented rare moments of family harmony now symbolized my deliberate exclusion from the inner circle. Throughout this period, my business continued to thrive despite, or perhaps because of my emotional struggles with family. Work became both escape and vindication, a space where my value was recognized and rewarded in ways my mother refused to acknowledge. Each new client, each successful project, each positive testimonial became another piece of evidence in a case my mother would never allow to be presented. The turning point in my career came unexpectedly through a connection made at a tech conference in San Francisco. I had attended primarily to learn about emerging web technologies, but during a networking lunch, I found myself seated beside Julia Winters, the Digital Transformation Director for Health Tech Solutions, a major company that developed software for hospitals nationwide. Our conversation began casually enough, discussing the morning's presentations and sharing industry observations. When she asked about my work, I described some recent projects, including a custom scheduling application I had built for a medical clinic in Denver. Her interest piqued. She asked detailed questions about functionality and user experience. "We've been looking for someone to revamp our customer portal," she explained. "Our internal team is swamped with the main product development. Would you be interested in discussing a contract arrangement?" 2 weeks later, after several video conferences and a detailed proposal process, I secured a 6-month contract with Health Tech Solutions. The project scope was larger than anything I had handled previously, and the compensation reflected that complexity. This single contract would generate more revenue than my entire previous year. The scale of the project necessitated expansion. I leased a small office space in downtown Denver and hired 2 junior developers to assist with implementation. My role evolved from hands-on coding to project management and client communication. For the first time, I was leading a team rather than working solo. The health tech project consumed my days and many nights, but the results justified the effort. We delivered the portal on time and under budget with functionality that exceeded the client's expectations. Julia was so impressed that she extended our contract to include additional features and ongoing maintenance. "You've accomplished in 6 months what our previous agency couldn't do in 2 years," she told me during our review meeting. "I've recommended your team to several colleagues in the industry. Those recommendations materialized into new opportunities. By the end of that year, my client roster included 3 Fortune 500 companies and several prominent startups. I had expanded to a team of 7 full-time employees occupying a larger office with views of the Rocky Mountains. My hobby had transformed into a legitimate digital agency. Financial success followed naturally. I experienced my first 6-figure year, then quickly surpassed that benchmark as larger contracts rolled in. I purchased a contemporary 3-bedroom condominium in one of Denver's most desirable neighborhoods, furnished it with pieces from local artisans, and finally felt established in both my career and personal life. With this newfound stability, I made one final attempt to bridge the growing divide with my family. The Christmas season seemed like the perfect opportunity for reconciliation. I decided to offer an all-expenses-paid family vacation to any destination of their choosing, a gesture that would both demonstrate my success and potentially rebuild our strained relationships. I announced this offer during Christmas dinner at my parents' home, the first family gathering I had attended in months. My father and sister responded with surprise and tentative interest. "You mean anywhere?" "Even internationally," Allison asked, clearly impressed. "Anywhere you want," I confirmed. "I've had a good year, and I'd like to do something special for everyone." My mother set down her fork deliberately, her expression hardening. "And where exactly is this money coming from? Those internet projects of yours?" "Yes, Mother. My business has been extremely successful. I have major corporate clients now, and a team of 7 employees." She laughed, a sharp sound devoid of warmth. "So you're spending your internet money before you even have it. That's not how responsible adults plan family vacations." "Margaret," my father interjected, "I think Randy is being generous. We should at least consider." "We don't need charity from someone who refuses to get a proper job," she cut him off. "When the tech bubble bursts again, don't come looking for help. We've managed our vacations just fine without your internet money." The table fell silent. Even Allison, typically aligned with our mother, looked uncomfortable with the harshness of the response. I maintained my composure, finished my meal in silence, and left shortly after, declining dessert with the excuse of an early morning meeting. That evening marked a turning point in my relationship with my family. My mother's rejection of my offer in front of everyone demonstrated that no level of success would ever be sufficient to earn her respect. The problem had never been my career choice or financial stability. It was her fundamental inability to accept any path that deviated from her narrow definition of success. The incident became common knowledge among our extended family. My aunt called the next day to apologize for my mother's behavior. "She had no right to speak to you that way, especially after such a generous offer," she said. "Your cousin showed me your company website. What you've built is impressive, Randy." These supportive reactions from relatives only seemed to harden my mother's stance. She began excluding me not just from vacations but from all family gatherings. Holiday invitations stopped coming. Sunday dinners no longer included calls to check my availability. When my grandmother celebrated her 80th birthday, I received an invitation directly from her rather than through my parents, as would have been customary. The complete estrangement affected me more deeply than I wanted to admit. Despite professional achievements and financial security, the family rejection left an emotional void that success couldn't fill. I found myself working increasingly long hours, pouring energy into my business to avoid confronting feelings of abandonment and unworthiness. A friend eventually convinced me to try therapy. My initial reluctance gave way, as I recognized patterns of behavior that were affecting both my personal and professional relationships. Weekly sessions with Dr. Karen Lewis helped me process the family dynamics that had shaped my self-perception and develop healthier responses to criticism and rejection. "Your mother's inability to validate your choices says more about her limitations than your worth," Dr. Lewis observed during one particularly insightful session. "You've built an impressive life and career by trusting your instincts despite constant undermining. That demonstrates remarkable resilience." As I worked through these emotional challenges, I gradually built a support network of genuine friends and colleagues who appreciated me for who I was, rather than how closely I adhered to prescribed expectations. Weekend hiking trips, dinner gatherings, and even holiday celebrations with this chosen family provided the connection and acceptance I had long sought from my biological relatives. It was during this period of personal growth that I stumbled upon information that would ultimately lead to my most satisfying act of revenge. While browsing local business news, I noticed an article about struggling tourism properties in the Rocky Mountain region. Among the properties mentioned was Mountain Peak Resort, the very establishment that had been the site of both cherished childhood memories and painful exclusion. According to the article, the resort had been facing financial difficulties for several years. Decreased tourism following economic downturns, coupled with increased competition from newer luxury properties, had left the owners struggling to maintain profitability. They were considering selling to a development company that planned to demolish the historic main lodge and cabins to build modern condominiums. Something about this news struck a chord deep within me. The resort that had symbolized both family togetherness and painful rejection might soon cease to exist in its current form. The place where my mother had deliberately excluded me, year after year, could potentially become something entirely different, erasing even the physical location of those memories. As I sat in my office overlooking the Denver skyline, a plan began to form in my mind, a plan that would either bring closure to this chapter of my life or create the most satisfying revenge story I could imagine. The day after discovering Mountain Peak Resort's financial troubles, I contacted my business attorney, Sofia Rodriguez. Over lunch at a quiet restaurant near my office, I explained my interest in potentially acquiring the property. "This is quite different from your technology business," Sofia noted, raising an eyebrow. "Do you have hospitality experience? I'm not aware of." I smiled. "None whatsoever. But I have personal history with the resort and financial resources that might make this viable. I want to understand what we're looking at before the developers tear it down." Sofia agreed to make discreet inquiries about the property's situation. Within a week, she had compiled preliminary information that confirmed my suspicions. Mountain Peak Resort was indeed in serious financial distress, operating at a loss for the past 3 years. The current owners, an elderly couple who had managed the property for nearly 4 decades, were actively seeking buyers but preferred someone who would preserve the resort's character rather than demolish it. "The asking price is $4.2 million, Sofia reported. "Below market value for the acreage, but they need significant renovations. Development company offered 3.8, but plans to bulldoze everything. Owners are stalling, hoping for a preservation-minded buyer." The figure was substantial, but not outside the realm of possibility. My business had been generating healthy profits, and I had maintained disciplined personal finances despite my increasing success. I had investment accounts, substantial savings, and excellent credit that could help secure financing. Over the next month, I immersed myself in research about resort management, property investment, and the regional tourism industry. I consulted with financial advisors, contacted commercial real estate experts, and even hired a hospitality consultant to assess the property's potential under new management. James Parker, the hospitality consultant, provided valuable insights after his site visit. "The bones of this place are excellent," he reported. "Prime location, historic charm, beautiful natural setting. The issues are mainly deferred maintenance and outdated amenities. With proper investment and modern marketing, this could be extremely profitable again." Armed with this information, I arranged a meeting with the owners, Harold and Eleanor Wilson. We met in the main lodge on a quiet Tuesday morning in early spring. The elderly couple seemed surprised by my age, but warmed quickly as I shared memories of visiting their resort throughout my childhood. "This place was magical to me growing up," I told them honestly. "Those summers by the lake, hiking the forest trails, evenings by the stone fireplace, they shaped my idea of what family vacations should be." Eleanor smiled warmly. "That's exactly what we've tried to create here for 40 years. Not just accommodations, but experiences that become treasured memories." I outlined my vision for preserving the resort's character while modernizing amenities and expanding marketing efforts. "I don't want to change what makes this place special. I want to ensure it continues for new generations of families." The conversation turned to business details. Their asking price was firm, but they offered flexible terms if it meant finding a buyer committed to the property's legacy. After several hours of discussion, we agreed to continue negotiations with our respective legal representatives. The acquisition process was complex and occasionally frustrating. Commercial property purchases involve extensive due diligence, environmental assessments, zoning reviews, and countless legal documents. My regular business operations required attention simultaneously, creating weeks of 12-hour workdays and stress-filled evenings. Financing proved less challenging than anticipated. My business credit was excellent, and several banks competed for the commercial loan opportunity. My personal contribution would come from investment accounts and business profits representing about 30% of the purchase price. During the negotiation period, I assembled a management team to handle resort operations. I hired an experienced hotel manager who had worked with boutique properties in Aspen and Vail. I recruited a marketing director with a background in luxury travel promotion. I contracted with a renowned local chef to revitalize the restaurant offerings. Each team member shared my vision for honoring the resort's history while enhancing its appeal to contemporary travelers. 3 months after our initial meeting, I sat across from Harold and Eleanor Wilson in their attorney's office, signing the final paperwork to transfer ownership of Mountain Peak Resort. The purchase price was $4 million with a structured payment plan that provided the couple with retirement security while making the acquisition manageable for me. "We feel good knowing the resort will be in caring hands," Harold said as we shook on the deal. "Your plans respect what we've built while securing its future." Eleanor added, "We hope you'll find as much joy in this place as we have." What they didn't know, what no one knew except for my closest confidants, was the personal satisfaction this acquisition represented. Beyond business opportunity and preservation, this purchase was the ultimate response to years of exclusion and dismissal. The transaction closed without publicity. I instructed my team to maintain normal operations while we developed renovation plans and marketing strategies. Existing reservations would be honored, and current staff retained with improved benefits. The transition would be gradual and carefully managed to minimize disruption to guests. Over the next 2 months, we implemented the first phase of improvements. Guest cabins received updated bathrooms and new mattresses. The main lodge underwent subtle modernization that preserved its rustic charm while adding contemporary comforts. The restaurant menu was revitalized with locally sourced ingredients and regional specialties. The website and booking system were completely rebuilt naturally, using my agency's expertise. Throughout this period, I deliberately kept my ownership private. Staff were instructed to refer to the new ownership group rather than me specifically. This discretion served 2 purposes, allowing me to establish operational changes without the distraction of personal connections and preserving the element of surprise for the moment I knew would eventually arrive. That moment was approaching faster than I anticipated. While reviewing upcoming reservations, I noticed a familiar name, Margaret Wheeler. My mother had booked the family's annual week at the resort. The reservation was for their traditional time frame in late July, requesting their usual lakeside cabin for 3 people. The reservation had been flagged by the system due to the cabin in question being scheduled for renovation during that period. The booking manager had emailed my mother explaining the situation and offering alternative accommodations at a discounted rate. According to the notes, my mother had responded with characteristic entitlement, insisting on her preferred cabin and citing their long history as loyal guests. As I stared at the reservation details on my computer screen, a complex mix of emotions washed over me. Here was the perfect opportunity to reveal my ownership in the most dramatic fashion. The family that had excluded me from their annual retreat would now find themselves potentially excluded from the very property they cherished. I called the resort manager into my office. "The Wilson family reservation next month," I said carefully. "I'd like you to decline it." "Decline it, sir?" he asked, clearly confused. "They're apparently long-time guests. The previous owners left notes about their annual visits." "I'm aware of their history here," I replied. "This is a special situation that I'll handle personally. Please have all communication about their reservation directed to me." The wheels were set in motion for a confrontation 15 years in the making. As I finalized plans for the resort's grand reopening celebration, scheduled to coincide with what would have been my family's arrival, I felt a strange calm settling over me. Years of hurt and resentment were crystallizing into a single moment of perfect justice that I had never imagined possible. The call came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 17 days before my family's scheduled arrival at Mountain Peak Resort. I was in my office reviewing renovation progress photos when my assistant notified me that Margaret Wheeler was on the line demanding to speak with management about her canceled reservation. I took a deep breath, straightened my posture, and answered with my most professional voice. "This is Randy Wheeler, owner of Mountain Peak Resort. How may I help you?" A moment of silence followed then, my mother's voice tinged with confusion. "Randy, what are you talking about? I need to speak with whoever's in charge of reservations. There's been a mistake with our annual booking." "There's no mistake, Mother. I am the owner of Mountain Peak Resort. I purchased the property from the Wilsons 4 months ago." Another pause, longer this time. "That's not possible. You couldn't afford. I mean, this is ridiculous. Put the actual manager on the phone." I assure you this is not a joke. Mountain Peak Resort is now part of Wheeler Digital Properties, my company. The reservation department was following my explicit instructions when they declined your booking. Her voice shifted from confusion to anger. This is absurd. We've been coming to the resort for 20 years. We have a standing arrangement. I demand to speak with Harold Wilson. Harold and Eleanor have retired to Arizona. They sold the property to me, and I'm implementing various changes, including a more selective guest policy. Selective guest policy? Her voice rose sharply. What does that mean? Our family has a tradition at Mountain Peak. Yes, a tradition you've maintained by deliberately excluding me for the past 5 years. I thought you might appreciate the irony. The line went quiet except for her audible breathing. When she finally spoke again, her voice had that dangerous calm I remembered from childhood confrontations. Your father will hear about this. We're coming next week as planned. This childish stunt won't change anything. You're welcome to try, Mother. But I suggest saving yourself the drive. Your names have been placed on our restricted guest list. She hung up without another word. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding but mind clear. The confrontation had been briefer than I'd imagined, but no less satisfying. For the first time in our relationship, I held the power position, and we both knew it. I immediately called the front desk manager to warn him about potential issues. My family may attempt to make a reservation under a different name or show up without one. Under no circumstances are they to be accommodated without my direct approval. The following day, my father called. His tone was conciliatory, almost pleading. Randy, your mother is very upset about this resort situation. Surely we can work something out. This vacation is important to us. Was it important to include your son in family traditions? I asked, keeping my voice level. 5 years, Dad. 5 years of deliberate exclusion while you stood by silently. That was your mother's decision, not mine, he protested weakly. And your silence was a decision too. You chose peace with her over standing up for me every single time. He sighed heavily. What do you want from us, Randy? Nothing. That's the point. I don't need anything from you anymore, not approval, not inclusion, not even a relationship if it comes with conditional acceptance. I've built my own success despite being told repeatedly it wasn't real or valuable. After a pause, he asked, Is there any way we can still come to the resort? Your mother won't admit it, but this is hitting her hard. Good, I said simply. Maybe now she understands how it feels to be excluded from something that matters to you. Despite my warnings, my family arrived at Mountain Peak Resort the following week, pulling up to the entrance in my father's silver SUV, as if nothing had changed. I watched from my office window as they unloaded luggage with confident familiarity, clearly expecting to be accommodated despite our conversations. I had prepared the staff thoroughly for this possibility. The front desk manager, Michael, greeted them professionally, but firmly informed them that the resort had no available accommodations for them. My mother demanded to speak with management, and Michael calmly explained that the owner had left specific instructions regarding their party. When they refused to leave, I decided a face-to-face confrontation was inevitable. I walked calmly through the recently renovated main lobby, noting with satisfaction the impressed glances from other guests admiring the improvements. My family stood at the reception desk, my mother's face flushed with anger, my father looking uncomfortable, and my sister Allison checking her phone with apparent disinterest. Hello, I said as I approached. I believe Michael has explained the situation, but perhaps I can clarify further. My mother turned, her expression shifting from anger to shock as she recognized me in a tailored suit and resort name badge. You actually bought this place? She asked incredulously. This isn't just some stunt. Mountain Peak Resort is now part of my business portfolio, yes. We've invested substantially in renovations and service improvements. The property is performing quite well under new management. My father stepped forward, attempting diplomacy. Randy, we're already here. Surely you can find space for us just for this week, for old time's sake. I maintained professional composure despite the emotions churning beneath the surface. I'm afraid that won't be possible. As I explained on the phone, your reservation was declined, and we're fully booked with guests who received proper confirmation. My mother's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby guests. This is ridiculous. We've been coming here for 20 years. You're doing this out of spite. Actually, I'm doing this because it's my property and I decide who stays here, I replied calmly, just as you decided who participated in family vacations. Several relatives from my mother's side had gathered in the lobby, having arrived separately for what was apparently a larger family gathering than I'd realized. My Aunt Catherine approached cautiously. "Randy, is that really you? You own this place now." I nodded. "Aunt Catherine, it's good to see you. Yes, I acquired the resort earlier this year." "That's incredible," she said, genuinely impressed. "Your web design business must be doing amazingly well." "Digital solutions agency," I corrected gently. "Yes, we've been fortunate enough to work with some major corporate clients over the past few years." My mother attempted to regain control of the situation. "This is all very impressive, but it doesn't change the fact that we have a family tradition here that you're disrupting out of childish resentment." The irony of her statement hung in the air, drawing uncomfortable glances from extended family members who were aware of how I'd been excluded from these very traditions. My cousin Bradley, who worked in finance and had often been held up as a model of success, stepped forward. "Aunt Margaret, from what I understand, Randy hasn't been included in these family trips for years. It seems like he's just maintaining the status quo you established." My mother's face reddened further as she realized she was losing the audience's sympathy. She turned to my father. "Thomas, get the car. We're not going to beg for accommodations at a place that clearly doesn't value loyal customers." As they gathered their luggage, Allison lingered behind. She approached me cautiously while our parents headed toward the exit. "Can we talk for a minute? Somewhere private." I nodded and led her to a small meeting room off the main lobby. Once inside, she studied me with new eyes. "You really did it, didn't you? Everything Mom said you couldn't do. The successful business, the financial security, and now this." She gestured around us. "It would seem so," I replied neutrally. "I never thought." She started, then paused. "I always believed Mom when she said freelancing wasn't a real career. I thought you were struggling all this time." That was a convenient narrative for everyone. It justified excluding me while preserving the family's self-image. She looked down, genuinely embarrassed. "She was wrong about you. We all were. The way you were treated, especially these last few years, it wasn't right." This admission, the first acknowledgement from any family member of the unfairness I'd endured, cracked something open inside me. Not enough for instant forgiveness, but enough to consider the possibility of a different relationship with my sister moving forward. "Thank you for saying that," I said simply. "Would it be okay if I stayed?" she asked hesitantly. "Not for the whole week, maybe just tonight. I'd like to hear more about your business, how you built all this. If that's okay." The request surprised me, but after a moment's consideration, I nodded. "We have a single room available in the East Wing. I'll have Michael arrange it for you." As she left to inform our parents of her decision, I watched through the window as my mother and father loaded their luggage back into the SUV. My mother's rigid posture and sharp movements conveyed her fury, while my father's slumped shoulders suggested resignation. They drove away from the resort without Allison. The family unit fractured in a way that mirrored how they had fractured it years ago by excluding me. That evening, I joined Allison for dinner in the resort's renovated restaurant. Over locally sourced trout and Colorado wines, we began the careful process of rebuilding a sibling relationship that had been sacrificed to our mother's rigid expectations. She asked genuine questions about my business journey, expressing admiration for what I'd accomplished without the support system she had always taken for granted. "I never realized how much harder you had to work for everything," she admitted. "Mom made it so easy for me to follow her approved path that I never questioned whether it was right for you, too." "We were both doing what we thought we had to," I replied. "You adapted to her expectations, I defied them. Neither approach was wrong, just different responses to the same controlling environment." By the end of dinner, something had shifted between us. Not complete reconciliation, but the beginning of mutual respect and understanding that had been missing throughout our adult lives. When she departed the next morning, we exchanged phone numbers with a genuine promise to stay in touch independently of our parents. As I watched her car disappear down the resort driveway, I realized that my revenge had yielded unexpected results. I had purchased Mountain Peak Resort to make a point about success and exclusion, but in doing so I had created an opportunity for rebuilding at least one family relationship on more authentic terms. In the weeks following the confrontation with my family, I threw myself into managing the resort's busy summer season. The renovations had been well received, with bookings exceeding projections and guest reviews, praising the perfect balance of traditional charm and modern amenities. What had begun as an act of revenge had evolved into a genuinely rewarding business venture. I established a routine of spending 3 days each week at the resort and the remainder at my digital agency office in Denver. The dual responsibilities were demanding but surprisingly complementary. My technology background proved valuable in modernizing the resort's operations, while the hospitality business offered a tangible counterpoint to the digital world I had inhabited exclusively for so long. As August transitioned to September, I noticed a subtle shift in my emotional landscape. The satisfaction of turning away my parents had been powerful in the moment, but the lasting impression was something more nuanced than simple revenge. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had demonstrated my worth, not through words or explanations, but through undeniable achievement. The need to prove myself to my mother began to fade, replaced by genuine pride in what I had built for my own satisfaction. This personal evolution coincided with a deepening relationship with my sister. After her unexpected stay at the resort, Allison and I began regular video calls that gradually rebuilding our sibling bond. She visited the resort again in September, this time bringing her fiancé James to meet me properly. "I never told you how impressed he was with your story," she confided during a hike on the resort's mountain trail. "After meeting Mom and Dad, he couldn't understand how we could be related to the same parents but have such different experiences." "Different children trigger different parental responses," I replied. "You fit her model of success, so she supported you. I challenged it, so she rejected me." "Still, it wasn't fair," Allison said firmly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I participated in that dynamic without questioning it. I'm sorry, Randy." Her apology, offered without qualification or excuse, helped heal wounds I hadn't fully acknowledged. The relationship we began rebuilding was more authentic than anything we had shared growing up, based on mutual respect rather than comparative worth in our mother's eyes. October brought an unexpected development. My father called on a Tuesday evening, his voice hesitant but determined. "I've been doing some thinking, son, about everything that's happened, my role in it, how your mother and I treated you over the years." I remained silent, allowing him space to continue. "I failed you," he said simply. "I should have stood up for you, should have insisted you be included in family activities regardless of your mother's opinions about your career. I chose the path of least resistance, and you paid the price for my weakness." His candor surprised me. Throughout my childhood, he had been the peacekeeper who rarely expressed independent views, especially when they might conflict with my mother's firmly held positions. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied carefully. "It means something to hear you acknowledge it." "Your sister has been talking with me," he admitted. "She's helped me see things from your perspective. I wonder, would it be possible for me to visit the resort sometime? Just me. I'd like to see what you've built, maybe start to make amends if you're willing." The request stirred complicated emotions. Part of me wanted to maintain the protective wall I had built, while another part recognized the courage it must have taken for him to reach out. "I think that could be arranged," I said finally. "The fall colors are at their peak right now. It's a good time to visit if you can get away." He arrived the following weekend, driving up alone in his sedan rather than the family SUV. I met him in the lobby, noticing immediately how he had aged in the months since our confrontation. His shoulders seemed more stooped, his hair grayer at the temples. "This place looks amazing, Randy," he said after an awkward greeting. "You've made some impressive changes while keeping the character we always loved." I offered him a tour of the renovated facilities. As we walked the grounds, our conversation gradually eased from stilted politeness to more genuine exchange. He asked thoughtful questions about the business decisions behind various improvements, showing respect for my expertise in a way he never had before. That evening, we sat by the massive stone fireplace in the main lodge, the same spot where we had played board games during family vacations years ago. After a second glass of whiskey, my father opened up further. Your mother and I aren't doing well, he admitted. After what happened here, something broke between us. For the first time, I truly saw how she treated you, how I enabled it, and I couldn't unsee it. I'm sorry to hear that I said surprised to find I meant it. Don't be. It's been a long time coming. I've spent decades avoiding conflict, convincing myself I was keeping the peace when I was really just avoiding responsibility. He looked directly at me. I'm proud of you, son. Not just for your success, which is remarkable, but for having the courage to stand up for yourself in ways I never could. The acknowledgement so long withheld meant more than I expected. We talked late into the night, not solving everything but establishing a foundation for a new kind of father-son relationship, one between adults with mutual respect, rather than the conditional parent-child dynamic of the past. When he left the following morning, we agreed to regular communication independent of my mother. He would need to navigate his own relationship with her, but our connection would no longer be contingent on her approval or participation. The holidays approached, bringing traditional challenges for fractured families. I decided to host a Thanksgiving gathering at the resort for friends and chosen family. My sister and her fiancé attended, as did my father, who drove up separately from my mother. We were joined by close friends from Denver business associates who had become personal confidants and staff members who had nowhere else to celebrate. The meal, served in the resort's private dining room, overlooking the lake, became a celebration of authentic connection. Laughter filled the space as we shared stories and expressed genuine gratitude for the relationships we had built by choice rather than obligation. The contrast with tense family holidays of the past couldn't have been more striking. As winter settled over the mountains, bringing the first significant snowfall, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line read simply, "Conversation," and the message was uncharacteristically brief. "I would like to meet to discuss recent events. Please suggest a time and place convenient for you." My initial impulse was to ignore the message or decline the invitation. The wounds were still fresh, and I harbored no illusions about a dramatic change in her perspective. After careful consideration, however, I replied, suggesting a coffee shop in Denver, neutral territory for a conversation that was long overdue. We met on a Wednesday afternoon in December. My mother arrived precisely on time, dressed immaculately, as always, her expression carefully composed. After ordering drinks, we sat at a corner table, away from other customers. "You look well," she began awkwardly. "The resort business seems to agree with you." "It's been surprisingly fulfilling," I replied. "Different challenges from technology work, but complementary in many ways." She nodded stiffly, then came directly to her point. "Your father and sister seem to think I owe you an apology for various things over the years. They've been quite insistent about it." I waited, saying nothing. "I still believe I wanted what was best for you," she continued. "A stable career, financial security, the things that build a respectable life. But I can acknowledge that perhaps I was inflexible in my vision of what that should look like." It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from my mother, it represented a significant concession. I recognized the effort it must have cost her to admit even this much imperfection in her judgment. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "For what it's worth, I've achieved the stability and security you wanted for me, just through a different path than you envisioned." "So, it would seem," she conceded, "your father can't stop talking about the resort. He says you've made it even better than it was before." The conversation continued with careful civility. We didn't resolve decades of misunderstanding in a single coffee meeting, nor did I expect we would. What mattered was establishing a framework for potential future interaction that didn't require either complete estrangement or my total capitulation to her worldview. As winter gave way to spring, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. What had begun as a quest for revenge had evolved into something more meaningful, a reclamation of personal power and the creation of new possibilities. The resort that once symbolized my exclusion now represented my ability to define success on my own terms. I hosted a special weekend for friends at Mountain Peak Resort as the first anniversary of my purchase approached. We gathered around a bonfire by the lake, sharing stories and toasting marshmallows under a blanket of stars. Looking around at these people who accepted me without conditions, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. "You know," said my friend Marcus, raising his glass, "when you first told me you were buying this place to stick it to your family, I thought you were making a business decision for all the wrong reasons. But look what you've created here." Something amazing came from that initial motivation. His observation resonated deeply. What began as an act of defiance had transformed into a source of genuine joy and connection. The resort had become not just a business success, but a physical manifestation of the life I had built, despite, or perhaps because of the obstacles placed in my path. The most profound lesson I learned through this journey was that true freedom comes not from winning approval or proving others wrong, but from releasing the need for external validation altogether. Success isn't measured by convincing skeptics of your worth, but by creating a life that aligns with your own values and brings genuine satisfaction. My relationship with my mother remains complicated, a work in progress with carefully maintained boundaries. My connections with my father and sister have deepened into something authentic and mutually supportive. The resort continues to thrive under my ownership, creating new memories for guests while serving as a reminder of how far I've come. If there's one message I hope resonates with those who hear my story, it's this: your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see your potential. The opinions that once wounded you so deeply can become irrelevant when you build a life on your own terms. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't making others sorry, but becoming so completely yourself that their approval no longer matters. Have you ever had someone laugh at your dreams, or tell you that your chosen path would never lead to success? How did you respond to that negativity? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the best response to those who doubt you is to build something so magnificent they can't help but see what they missed. Thank you for listening, and remember, your path is valid even when others can't see where it leads.